The 2016 Distinguished Staff, recognized by Cal Farley's Boys Ranch Alumni Association, are John and Desta Sharp. John and Desta grew up in Alva, Oklahoma, and graduated from Alva High School, John in '54 and Desta in '56. After high school, John joined the U.S. Navy and spent 4 years as a radar operator on the LST USS Lincoln County. Desta worked part-time beginning her senior year in high school as a telephone operator for Southwestern Bell, and went on as full-time upon graduation. After John's discharge from the Navy, he and Desta married. John attended Oklahoma City University for 1 year, then went to work for the state of Oklahoma in the park system. They moved to Boiling Springs State Park, where John was assigned to work with improving and beautifying that park. While living there, the Sharps were introduced to Cal Farley's Boys Ranch. The youngest boys at the ranch, living in Frying Pan, came and stayed in the cabins at the park and swam in the park pool, which was run by Desta. The second year the Frying boys came, their interest grew and they began to ask questions about qualifying to become house parents at the ranch. That was the summer of '63. As Desta put it, since the Lord had it in his plan for us to work at the ranch, in February of '64 there was a notification on the radio that a representative from Cal Farley's would be interviewing couples to become house parents at Boys Ranch. They interviewed and were hired. On a blustery day in March, along with their 2 boys, Kim, 7, and sick with a case of the mumps, and Dean, having just turned 4, the Sharps moved to Boys Ranch on Friday the 13th of March, 1964. They topped the hill a few miles out from the ranch, and they could see the panhandle winds whipping up the sand and red clay of the Canadian River, and both of them thought separately, "Oh my, what have we gotten into?" The first few weeks were exciting, yet scary, being so far from home and their family in Oklahoma. Then 2 weeks after John got there, he came down with the mumps and had to be admitted to the hospital in Dumas. The day he got released from the hospital, Kim came down with a case of the measles. Dean's turn with both the measles and the mumps came soon after. With very little access to phones to call family back in Oklahoma for support, there was a real test of their devotion to Boys Ranch. The rest is a long, long story of service and devotion to boys. John and Desta were house parents for 10 years, 5 years in Lute's home and 5 years in Jeffrey's. At that time, all big boys' homes had 36 boys, plus their own 2. Those times were often considered organized chaos and hurting. But John knew most of the mischief boys would get into, for you see he lost his own father at the age of 13 and was somewhat of a mischievous boy himself before graduating high school and enlisting in the Navy. Now they look back and laugh, say what fun it was raising so many boys over the years. For some reason, this picture of the mules Pat and Mike teamed up to haul kids on a campout seemed appropriate in telling the story of John and Desta as they teamed up to work together in taking care of boys. Desta once sat a horse pretty well. Of course, that's back when everything was black and white. What fun they had on campouts, cooking over the open grill. Any of you remember wearing white Levi's on campouts? Whether it was Ruidoso or Red River or wherever summer trips were memorable and fun times were held by the kids, all 38 of them. Well, usually fun times. One alum spoke of the time when John saved a boy's life on a summer trip by reacting fast and effectively when the boy was having a seizure. "I'm able to email Donnie today because of Mr. Sharp's quick and capable response to a boy under his care." While in Lute's and Jeffrey's, the Sharps took kids to Ruidoso, Red River, and Carlsbad Caverns. They were the first to take their kids to Six Flags, Texas for a summer trip, camping out at Lake Dallas. Those were good days. The Sharps took their sports pretty seriously too, as they and the boys spoke of their winning the All-Sports Trophy 3 straight years. You could always find John in the crowd. He was the gentleman next to Desta, who was the most vocal fan in attendance. Once during a football game, one of Dean's teammates asked him to ask her to be quiet, to which he responded, "You tell her, I'm not." Another time, while playing Dalhart in basketball at the ranch, one of the opposing players asked, "Who's that woman that keeps yelling at y'all?" It was Mom, of course. They would never let up. They were also the only dorm ever to win the coveted rodeo trophy. They only gave that trophy away 1 year. One alum shared that John worked with me on my softball skills, which has resulted in me playing ball till I turned 50, and also doing some umpiring. Christmas at the ranch was very special too in those days, as you can tell by the excitement on their faces. Actually, for many of the boys, it was a special time because they got to go home. but for some because the routine of the ranch was very different, and the Sharps spent their Christmases at the ranch trying to make what would have been a hard time for kids something special. One man wrote to me, "I went to the ranch in October of '64 and was not allowed to go home for the first Christmas. John got me involved in building the dorm Christmas scene. This has turned into a lifelong thing for me. I usually have a Christmas scene at my home and make ornaments for friends and family." It is quite interesting and telling of John and Desta that when asked for pictures to use for this tribute, so few were of them and so many of the boys at the ranch. I had to go back and seek more personal ones. They truly invested their lives as house parents in their kids, all 38 of them. Actually, over that 10-year period, they were parents to nearly 200 boys. While serving as house parents, it had many advantages. John yearned to go back to farming, and in 1974, he transferred to the Boys Ranch Farm Program. He still worked with the boys, having crews in the dairy barn, processing plant, cow and calf crew, hog farm, hay hauling, and cattle roundups. He worked with many boys during that time. John became the Farm and Ranch Director in 1982 and also the Rodeo Director. Desta worked in the main building as country store manager and snack bar supervisor, later moving into the receptionist area. She greeted guests, explaining the purpose of the ranch and organizing tours for guests. In '93, she went to work at the Blakemore Middle School and later as assistant to the ranch psychologist. When asked what events were the most significant while at the ranch, they said, "We consider our life at the ranch as the biggest event in our lives." Life outside the ranch was also pretty enjoyable too. Vacations with family and friends were memorable. These included trips to Disneyland, twice to Disney World, the first time with Finsteads, the second time with Dean and Sydney, traveling to the Calgary Stampede with the entire family and the entire Finstead family. Wow, that was a blast. Along with blasting Calgary with this Texas Wild Bunch. They also had a great deal of fun going to Sugarite Canyon near Raton, New Mexico, inner tubing down snow-covered hills with the Bauchums, bobsledding down the mountains with the Pegrams and their BR boys. They cannot forget the weekend trips to the Mora House. So many wonderful memories made with their Boys Ranch family. John and Desta lived at the ranch for 34 years. Leaving did not mean an end to working with kids. When you've invested in the lives of so many boys, you continue to have opportunities to parent and to grandparent literally hundreds of kids. Their lives have been fruitful in so many ways. The testimonies of kids are a tribute in themselves. Actually, they're testimonies not of kids, but of fathers and of grandfathers who point to John and Desta as the people who influenced them the most. One said, "I still see John and credit him for the person I am today. They will definitely the people who raised me and led by example." Another said, "It is evident that the Sharps are distinguished individuals and are very qualified for this award." John and Desta were an influence on me for my work ethic and my morals. Without them, many of us would not be where we are today. Another said, "Mr. and Mrs. Sharp both taught us self-respect, loyalty, hard work, and dedication through not only their words, but their lives at Boys Ranch." Literally generations look back on the influence and lives of service of John and Desta Sharp. You have made life better for hundreds of us, and future generations are already blessed by you. It is with gratitude and respect that we have the opportunity to honor you as the Cal Farley's Boys Ranch Alumni Association Distinguished Staff for 2016.